his own words is that he is seeking reconciliation. And while that may be possible with his father, given his advancing years and the fact that he's had, serious health problems, there really needs to be a different way of thinking, approaching the relationship with his brother, because I don't think I've ever known it as more fractured as it is at the moment.
Hi, all. Kinsey Schofield here. Welcome to Crown and Conflict, a series dedicated to dissecting the most riveting royal scandals in history with insight from world-renowned royal experts. We explore the stories that shook the monarchy and captivated the globe. But today, we're joined by Russell Meyers, author of William and Catherine, the Monarchy's New Era. It just gives you goosebumps, the inside story, a book that offers a compelling argument for how the Prince and Princess of Wales may be stabilizing the crown after one of its most turbulent modern chapters. Russell, I mean, what a time to write a book about how captivating, compelling, stable, in love, and just reliable the Prince and Princess of Wales are.
Well, for sure. I mean, thank you very much for having me. It's what a time it's been over the last few years, and I thought that what a better time to give a view of how William and Catherine have dealt with some of these huge, huge moments in royal history. And it seems we are living in truly incredible times because, firstly, I couldn't believe that there hadn't been a joint biography on William and Catherine in about a decade. And then when I looked at sort of the period that I've certainly worked through over nearly a decade, it's been an incredible period. You've had scandal, you've had infighting, there's been real heartache at the centre of the family. And of course, there's been some real devastation as well, that the way that the King and the Princess of Wales have dealt with their cancer diagnosis and their treatment and everything that means for the family. So I thought, what better time to delve into the lives of two of the most famous people on the planet and two of the most important people for the future of the monarchy.
And with the chaos that surrounds the family right now with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, is there a sense from the people in your space and in your circle that there's a real interest in this book specifically because people are looking forward to a Prince William reign, a King William reign? People are now going, we need a clean slate. And you've written this basically Bible on this couple that gives us a better understanding of who they are in their leadership.
Well, it's certainly an interesting time, not only for the monarchy at large, but for William and Catherine as individuals as well, because you just look at the last couple of years. Of course, there's been huge, huge flashpoints, but the scandal enveloping the royal family, and it has affected them all, undoubtedly, regarding Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and the allegations that he's facing, not only in relation to his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and the allegations of sexual assault, which he's always denied, but his arrest recently has really brought into focus where the royal family stand on this. And I thought it was really pertinent that story get told. Of course, I finished a book at the end of last year, and we've just recently had the arrest. But it really speaks to how William and Catherine both viewed the royal family's handling of the Andrew scandal, and potentially, how things could have ended up differently if William had his way.
There are conflicting reports about that. There, some say, and I'd love to know specifically where you land on it. Some say that William is this really angry, like controlling person who said, "I told you so." And then there are other reports that say William's worried about Andrew's mental health. I mean, I guess two things can be true at the same time, but where do you fall there?
Well, if you take it back to the period of 2019, and this is explored in the book about how we all know what happened with Andrew's disastrous interview on BBC Newsnight, and how it was simply shocking. I mean, everybody felt that, and certainly the palace and the senior members of the family, how he didn't explain his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He certainly didn't apologise about it, and he didn't acknowledge the real impact and distress on Epstein's victims. And that essentially not only set across his downfall for the general public on how they viewed him, but William at the time actually spoke to the Queen and his father and said, Andrew should have no place within the institution. He should be banished. He will be a stain on the monarchy, and he really implored them to banish him before the rot set in. However, hindsight is a wonderful thing at some times, but certainly William didn't necessarily push the issue because of his love and respect for his grandmother and his father. He knew, how these things work in a hereditary monarchy, a hierarchical monarchy rather. And so, there is that respect of how William has a viewpoint of how the family business should be run, and there's no point in him sort of pressing forward his view. He's the heir, and certainly he needs to fall in line with what his father wanted, and how King Charles wants to shape his legacy as well. But I think you're right. You can have sympathy for somebody's mental health, and I think there certainly is sympathies within the family on a point of someone being brought to, the point of all out sort of breakdown. And certainly we understand that that's how Andrew is feeling. However, on the flip side, the public lack of sympathy in this case is there to be seen. And certainly I think the royal family feel that Andrew has got himself into this mess and he's got to get himself out of it as well.
That's very fair. I'm sure you've been having to navigate abdication questions with all of this Andrew fallout, which is just the most frustrating thing. You're like, why would we blame the king for something that his brother did? Are your sources telling you that this is not the way Prince William would want to inherit the throne?
Oh, certainly. I mean, he has a deep respect for his father. I mean, there's often been talk about the fractiousness of their relationship, about how it wasn't necessarily close during his adolescence and early adult years. But I think William's had a real newfound respect for his father, certainly after becoming a parent. This was told to me time and time again, that he realizes what a difficult job his father had in trying to become a single parent of somebody who hadn't been the most adept at showing his emotions in the past. And, he has a really difficult situation on his hands, the king. I mean, we've seen two unprecedented statements in a matter of weeks from the king. The fact that he's not only stripped his brother of all his titles and his honours, he's banished him from his royal lodge mansion, but he's also said, most importantly, that the law must take its course and that Buckingham Palace will assist the police in any investigations. And, William and his father speak often. William is not about to try and jump into his shoes. I think certainly he wants his father to be there for a long time, because even though he is formulating, his life plan or what he wants the monarchy to look like in the future, he still has the utmost respect for his father. And he certainly wouldn't want to take the top job, as it were, any prematurely than it would need to be.
All right, when you set out to write this book, what misconceptions, if any, about Prince William and Catherine were you most intent on correcting? Because, we hear royal rumors all the time. Did you have anything in mind that you were like, I don't like the fact that this is just floating around out there. I'd like to make sure that people know that this isn't true.
Well, I went into the project with an open mind. I've obviously seen throughout my work as a royal editor and being on the rota and following the royals' endeavours both at home and abroad. It's normally sort of an arm's length view of what they would be like behind the scenes. And of course, we've heard a lot from Harry and Meghan. The book takes the reader through a journey chronologically. So there will be obviously a Harry and Meghan section because it was an important point within the last few years. But what I really found fascinating was time and time again, people close to William and Catherine would really tell me and impart their knowledge about how much of a partnership they are, and how much William really relies on Catherine, not just in a professional sense. And we know Catherine as one of the most photographed people in the world, one of the most famous people in the world, but also a central figure within the monarchy. And I think people will find that surprising, that she's really across the strategy. She's very, very adept at looking towards the future of what their shared vision will be, but how William really relies on her as well. Emotionally, there was a lot of close friends telling me that in the mix of her cancer diagnosis and her treatment, she was arguably the stronger of the two. And I found that fascinating, that she was the one experiencing it And here was William displaying all these emotions, his father in hospital, having cancer treatment, his wife as well. He's looking after the children. What would his future be like? And yet it was Catherine who was able to take that step back and really look at the future from maybe sort of a bird's eye view and manage expectations and emotions.
That's so sweet and heartbreaking at the same time, but you can't help but worry about where his mind was when he had lost his mother. So that there must have been some fear related to not wanting his children to ever experience something similar. I'm glad you document that. That's so sweet, and thank you for sharing it with me here. Hey, ladies, if you've been feeling exhausted, anxious, foggy, or just not like yourself, no matter what you try, and your doctor brushes it off as a normal part of aging, you're not crazy. You're being ignored. The medical system has been far too dismissive of women's hormonal health for far too long. Joy was created by a woman who lived this frustration firsthand during perimenopause and decided women deserved better. Every Joy Lab includes a consultation with a licensed clinician who specializes in women's hormones, a real expert who explains what's actually happening in your body. Many doctors also never mention that testosterone is a critical hormone for women, influencing energy, mood, metabolism, and confidence. Yet, it's rarely tested. Joy offers real treatment options, including hormone or peptide therapies and personalized supplements tailored to what your body actually needs. For a limited time, you can add a 60-day supply of their estrogen face cream for just $1 with clinician approval. Stop guessing and start getting answers. Go to joyandblokes.com/Kinsey and use code Kinsey for 50% off your labs and 20% off all supplements. That's joyandblokes.com/Kinsey, code Kinsey for 50% off your labs and 20% off all supplements. Joy and Blokes, healthcare that actually listens to women. You do write about the emotional toll of 2024. How did those moments reshape William? I don't even want to say privately, publicly. Like when he sat down with BBC One this week, I don't think I would have seen that William had 2024 not happened. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I think they have been hugely profound experiences, not only for the Prince and Princess of Wales, but for the King as well, that he's just certainly been on a journey that he's still undergoing with his treatment. And Catherine, she may be in remission, but we've heard from her herself. She's had a profound experience of talking about nature that's explored in the book about her feelings around that. But Close Mentor told me about William. He felt like he'd been hit by a bus. It was disorientating. He felt in a complete spin, and you have to put yourself in his shoes. And what struck me when Catherine made that incredible statement when she was announcing that she had cancer was when she spoke about contemplating telling their three children, and that really struck with me at the time. And speaking to people close to them, it was this whole time where time stood still for both of them, and William really felt it very, very difficult to deal with. And yet they spoke about it. They took a step back from duties. They realised if you get your personal life in check and you try to do as much good as you can in really creating an environment that's stable, that we've seen with what they've done for their children, then the rest of it will follow. And that's certainly different of previous generations of the royal family.
Absolutely. This is kind of a nosy question, but do you believe that Catherine's health scare prompted any reflection from William about faith or spirituality? Because I have heard yes from Catherine. And then I've always heard that William's kind of on the fence when it comes to his faith.
Yes, I mean, it's difficult to know or to think of William as the head of the Church of England because he doesn't really have an external faith, I would put it. I think that certainly he speaks to his father and his grandmother when she was alive about what faith means to them, and he takes that on board. And certainly William has more of a spirituality around him, but time and time again this came up. He doesn't necessarily feel that you need to go to church or you need to have specific times in the week in order to reflect. But like you said, that BBC Radio 1 interview, I think, speaks about spirituality and to be sort of at one with your own feelings. And people that he'd worked with in the air ambulance said that he was really in tune with that spirituality, the sort of circle of life of attending road traffic accidents where children had been involved. And he had, quite a profound experience at that time about thinking about the fragility of life. And certainly Catherine's experience with her illness has made them both stop and think about how fragile life can be. And we've heard Catherine speaking about nature and how it's healed her. There's a bit in the book about how she's immersed herself in forest bathing, and certainly that's what rubbed off on William as well.
That's nice to hear. You mentioned just their solid base when it comes to their family and how they prioritize family in a way we haven't seen previous generations. Is there emphasis on their children respected by other members of the royal family, senior members of the royal family, or is it considered an inconvenience?
Well, we've seen them break the mold with their children. Certainly William wanted, in quotes, a normal upbringing. This is something that he yearned for all throughout his childhood, his adolescence. He would speak to people about, what it was like to be normal, life outside the palace walls, and certainly Diana tried to give both her sons a glimpse of the outside world, what it meant to be outside the institution. And I think certainly when you look at the wider picture of how William and Catherine have brought their children up, there isn't this heir and spare dynamic. And that is definitely something that William really felt was important for his own children. Of course, we know the fractiousness of his relationship with Harry. But what I explored in the book was how this wasn't a product of Meghan coming on the scene. It wasn't a product of Harry deciding to leave in an instant. It was a pattern that had happened throughout their lives. And the heir and the spare dynamic is certainly a problem, not only for the British royal family, but I think monarchies throughout the world. And that's what William and Catherine don't want for their children. It needs to be in an even keel. It needs to be strong and stable environment. And I think you see that demonstrated. The children are only young, but they seem great friends. They help each other out. Charlotte is, the one telling her brother to bow or to put his hands by his side, and that comes from a real sense of togetherness. And certainly, I think the Waleses have got it right in that sense.
You're right. I think of Louis often. He's just the cutest little thing. You report that Catherine hesitated over the Princess of Wales title. What ultimately convinced her to embrace that? I mean, what? I was so thrilled. I was so thrilled when she took on that title.
Well, you think of the weight of expectation on William, and that's definitely something I considered throughout this book, looking into his childhood and then him formulating his own role about how he'd always had a path that had been predetermined. And from his very early years, it was what he was told from not only the Queen, but the Queen Mother. He was treated differently. Certainly, as we've just said, about that, it's not what the Princesses of Wales wanted for their children. But for Catherine, there was a weight of expectation that she thought of taking a title and a role such as Princess of Wales. I mean, Diana really was a trailblazer. We only have to look at how popular she still is in today's society. She is an iconic woman. She has transcended what it meant to be a royal, and certainly Catherine wanted to stand on her own 2 feet. She wanted to get to grips with what it meant to be a member of the royal family. And she did take some convincing. It was something that, she was told that this is a role you can use for the greater good. You can use your profile. And I think she's done a great job. She's often criticized unfairly, I think, for taking an awfully long time to get used to public speaking or work out what the pillars of her work were. But when you think being a member of the royal family is a job for life. It's not something you retire early or you can retire even at 65, 70. It is something that you're going to be doing like the late Queen did until your dying days. And it's definitely a different way of thinking about it when we look at it from that perspective.
How conscious do you think Catherine is of the comparisons? Because sometimes, and this is a girl question, I apologize, but sometimes she wears outfits that are almost identical to Diana's. And I'm wondering how intentional that was, or, is she just a fashionista and I need to suck it up and not make those comparisons?
Well, I think you only need to look at what the kids are wearing now. They're all wearing 90s fashion, aren't they? I
Yeah,
mean, I thought
that's
baggy
true.
jeans I thought baggy jeans went out a long time ago when I stopped wearing them decades
Yeah.
ago. However, listen, all the comparisons are always going to be there. I mean, two iconic women, two fantastic ambassadors for the royal family, and two people who are trying to make a difference in what their public profile was for. And certainly, as I said, Diana really broke the mold of what it meant to be a senior member of the royal family: compassion, empathy, taking on causes that were not traditionally taken on by members of the royal family. And I think Catherine's really trying to do that as well. I mean, she's talking about early years, talking about addiction as well. I mean, this is something that the royal family probably would have never spoken about in generations gone by.
I mean,
But
Princess
again,
Margaret, she might have been the poster girl if we want to
well,
talk about a beverage
she
or
did
two.
enjoy some of the finer things in life. I think that's certain. But again, they're trying to reshape and redefine what it means to be a royal in the modern era. And there's no shame in sort of borrowing things from previous generations. Take the good and then work out what you want to sort of shape your vision. And that's certainly what William and Catherine are doing.
Well, I apologize for not like prepping you for this question, but I was thinking about this as I was getting ready to talk to you, and this is the perfect segue. Why did it annoy so much of the old guard when William made the comment about the lowercase r? Is it because royalty with a lowercase r? Is it because it's hard to interpret? Is it, do you know, do you understand what I'm asking? Like, I just didn't understand why so many people were hostile about that comment. I just thought, I think he's saying, let's take a chill pill, or I'm not going to be as aggressive or formal as the previous monarchs before me. But I was surprised at how angry some people were by that statement.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It means, what does it mean, this royal with a small r? I mean, you have to potentially look at it from William's point of view. He thinks that the royal family needs to be more approachable. They need to be more accountable, and certainly they need to show an interest in what younger people hold dear. Younger people really interested in the environment. They're interested. They're cause driven more so than ever before. And certainly that William and Catherine have tried to formulate their roles and the pillars of their work, I often call them, whether that's homelessness, whether that's the environment, whether that's, the earliest years of someone's life. But these are really interesting and important aspects of the royal family to be involved with. But also, if you take the former Prince Andrew, he was always renowned for being pompous, certainly obsessed with his privilege and his entitlement. That is absolutely alien to William and Catherine. And of course, they may live in castles and palaces some time of the year. They of course get to go on nice places on holiday and ride around in helicopters. However, it is all about perception, and you need to be in tune with what the people want. And I think certainly, time and time again, this came up about what their vision is for a modern monarchy, and it is to be more accountable and it is to be more relatable.
And I think that's great. I think that's fair, and that is what people are asking for right now. Um, do you ever still see any of the reluctant prince the papers used to warn us about when when you're following around Prince William on the Royal Road? Are you going, I don't see that guy anymore?
Well, it was interesting that certainly people I was speaking to didn't shy away from some criticism from him, because certainly in his early years he was labelled as a reluctant royal, or the shy prince, or work shy Wills as he was dubbed in the British media. And I thought that was really interesting to explore, because this didn't need to be this boy who was born into this incredible privilege and lapped it up. It was far from it in the early years. I mean, talk about normality. It was something that he craved. And he didn't want to rush into royal duties. He was reluctant to get into it. He wanted to have a career in the military. Then, when it was expected from courtiers that he would end up doing royal duties, he then went into the air ambulance. But what I discovered was that was signed off at the highest point. He discussed this at length with his grandmother. She'd had a period in Malta when Prince Philip was stationed in the Mediterranean, and she absolutely loved that period of her life with Philip. She thought it was an experience that gave her a worldly view and a life outside the palace walls, and she encouraged it, as did Charles, to listen, go and live your life. don't have any regrets and come into this job because it is a job for life when you feel ready and willing to give your best to it. And certainly that is exactly what William and Catherine did. And, they would say themselves they were very privileged to have that experience as well.
Good advice from the Queen. All right, your book challenges elements of spare. By the way, thank God. I was so happy to see this. The fight between Prince William and Harry and the dog bowl, I still think about pretty regularly. I'm concerned about the dog bowl. I noticed Camp Sussex hasn't pushed back through some of their favorite outlets like People Magazine and Us Weekly, where they normally have someone whisper in their ear that they don't like something. Did I miss that, or have they allowed this story to kind of simmer?
Well, certainly I haven't heard anything to the contrary. And, let's be honest, the only two people who know exactly what happened during the said fracas of when William went round to remonstrate with Harry is the two brothers themselves. However, Harry painted a certain picture about how William was aggressive, how he was violent, how he assaulted him. And certainly that wasn't my experience, having to spoke to numerous sources on this one incident. It was described to me as massively overblown. There was, of course, an admission that there was an incident between them. The incident isn't in question about how William was remonstrating with Harry over Meghan's treatment of staff. That was something that William and Catherine felt very, very strongly at. These people had worked within their household for a very long time, and the harmony of their household was being broken up. But to accuse somebody of assault, I think, is certainly one version. And, there can be two versions, there can be several versions sometimes of a story, especially involving the royal family. But I think the people that I spoke to thought it was very important to put on the record another version of that story.
And I'm glad you did. So thank you for including it. As you put this book together and you were looking at some of the grenades that were being tossed over UK side from the United States, in 2023 specifically, which was a tough year for the royal family with Harry and Meghan generating a lot of content between interviews and podcasts and yada, yada, yada. Do you think that Harry had any regrets come 2024 when he realized how sick the Princess of Wales and King Charles were? Do you think that he thought, oh my gosh, they're in such a tough situation, and I likely have made their life a lot more difficult through my actions?
Well, I think you only need to watch Harry's recent interviews. I mean, he looks deflated. He's had an awful lot on his plate. He's had multiple cases against the British media, a long-running case against the British government. He obviously feels very, very strongly about his security situation. People can certainly understand that from a personal point of view. He feels unable to bring his children and his wife over to Britain because of threats to his own safety. And absolutely, you can understand that. But I think his own words is that he is seeking reconciliation. And while that may be possible with his father, given his advancing years and the fact that he's had, serious health problems, there really needs to be a different way of thinking, approaching the relationship with his brother, because I don't think I've ever known it as more fractured as it is at the moment. They certainly haven't spoken in a very, very long time. People close to William had said to me, there are things that Harry had said that are absolutely unforgivable. He felt very, very strongly about how his brother had treated the late Queen, and indeed the institution, with the way that they went about announcing on Instagram that they were leaving the royal family, how there were certain demands that they wanted. And there was a big feeling about how these things could have been handled in-house. And as well, there was a deep sadness from William. Catherine, and as I explained in the book, had less interest in trying to keep Harry as part of the royal fold, mainly because she thought that if you don't want to be a team player, then you can walk, because it needs to be everybody playing on the same team. But certainly there was sadness in the first instance on William's side.
Yeah, I think that was so interesting to me that you said Catherine was like more logistical. It was less emotional about it than Prince William was. And you just talked about how hard she worked and how much patience went into her role within the royal family, years of trying to become comfortable in front of the camera, trying to develop these initiatives that truly meant so much to her. And then you see someone that doesn't want to be there. And I'm sure you're just like, then don't be here. And there was that story that everyone, perpetuated after Prince Philip's funeral of Catherine. Everyone's like, Catherine is the mediator. Look at Catherine leading Harry to Prince William after Prince Philip's funeral. So that stood out to me basically when you wrote that. And I thought, I like this woman more and more. The more I read about her, the more I love her. You did write, this was also very interesting, that the king, Prince Charles at the time, his courtiers had considered offering Harry the role of Governor General of Canada. And that stood out to me because that contradicts some of the Sussex claims that they were completely abandoned and no one tried to work with them. Here you have this unique opportunity, and you're going to tell me why it didn't work out. But that's so important to note historically, that these conversations were happening behind the scenes.
Well, absolutely. I'll tell you the first point of Harry and Meghan being abandoned. That was certainly their standpoint about how they weren't supported, and time again this came up about how that there were efforts not only from the courtiers, but there were efforts certainly from Catherine and Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, the Countess of Wessex she was at the time, to try and help Meghan sort of involve herself more in the role, to get her to understand that things can't happen at a million miles an hour. You can't just expect to come into this family business and to all work. It has to, I always say the winds of change happen very, very slowly at the palace. It's 1,000-year-old institution, and perhaps they could have been a lot more patient. Now, with the Governor General role, it was interesting because this actually first appeared in Valentine Lowe's courtiers book, and it was really interesting to take that further. And I found out that was one of a dozen options that were put on the table for Harry and Meghan. They were certainly aware of them. Now, you couldn't have been Harry couldn't have become Governor General of Canada. You need to be Canadian, but there were certain other options put in front of them to say, you might be able to work and have a role within the Commonwealth. Meghan could potentially go back to acting. There was nothing off limits, and I think that there was just a constant atmosphere that they were fighting against the institution. And while it may have been said, many times about how Meghan was the one to sort of wrench Harry away from this family, I found a very different argument at play here, because Harry didn't necessarily think that he had a long-term future being the spare, maybe slotting into the institution that like he wanted to really have a bit more of a bit part role. Catherine was very, very clear how she thought that it was inevitable that he would leave. And again, this goes back years and years. There was the fractiousness of his relationship with his brother. Both William and Harry, were on very, very different paths. And again, that speaks more about the institution than it does to their relationship as brothers.
Do you look at what Harry's doing today at all, and ever wonder if he's still trying to force the half in, half out role when you see him show up in the UK and I'm not discouraging him doing charity events in the UK, but it does feel sometimes like he's trying to, at least public perception wise, look like he's a working royal or still has some sort of foot in that world, ultimately likely so that they can continue to monetize or commercialize that proximity to the British royal family. But sometimes I'm like, your grandma would not like this.
Well, certainly, I think it's all that Harry knows. His relationship with the royal family is absolutely within his blood. It's all he has grown up with. And certainly when you're trying to create a life outside of the institution, it's going to be difficult because their corporate endeavors haven't really worked out. They've had to deal with Netflix and it's gone by the wayside. The Spotify thing didn't really work out as well. And Harry has, a few good things going for him. Invictus Games, undoubtedly one of the jewels of the royal family, let alone Prince Harry. It is an incredible institution that he has managed to formulate and go from strength to strength. But there's always a sense of wanting more or wanting something outside of what he's got at the moment. I can't see him coming back into the royal fold. I don't think the royal family would want him to do that. Certainly his brother would not. And would Harry want it as well? I mean, there is ties that he has to charities. Certainly, I think he would undoubtedly want to spend more time in Britain. It is his homeland after all. He must want his children to come and visit their grandfather. And it's all the more pertinent while the king is in his advancing years and still having that cancer treatment as well.
Well, Russell Meyers, I caught you in the middle of a royal tornado. I'm so grateful that you still had time to talk to me because I know you're so very busy. William and Catherine, The Monarchy's New Era. The inside story is available now for pre-order, or you can grab it in stores March 10th. Congratulations on all of your success. Congratulations on a beautiful new book. And I hope you come back and talk to us again very soon.
I'd love to. Thanks so much, Kinsey. Really appreciate it.